in terms of Jordan Peterson's
Yeah,
position on God, I think this is it's so ridiculous. Like he says that he's not Christian. He doesn't necessarily believe in God, but then when you ask him, he goes on for 20 minutes. But he really does. I think more recently he kind of seemed to come closer to admitting that he does believe in God.
it seems
And
like he's made
just
quite a few statements that where he does
yeah,
seem to be saying that he believes in God. I mean, like I could believe that he's not entirely consistent about this, but
yeah,
I think it might be that he doesn't exactly call himself. I, again, I wouldn't claim that anything he said about this is particularly clear, but I do, as far as I can make sense of what he's saying, I think it's that he believes in God, but he's not a Christian. You know, he's just like, he just thinks God exists, and and then like maybe his attitude towards Christianity is more ambiguous. You know, maybe it's just like you know one among many mythic systems that preserve some eternal truth or something like that. I mean, that
mhm,
again, as a longtime Jordan Peterson watcher, that's my best guess. Although, also, I will say that the sort of like word salad that he dishes up, like when he's directly asked about this, is strange enough that like I could believe that I'm misinterpreting his position.
yeah. Well, what does God even really mean, man? What does it
Yeah,
mean to ask that question? That and it. I used to be when I used to be more of a fan of
yeah,
his. I think I liked him more because he would talk more about different religions and kind of comparing the different Jungian archetypes between different religions, and it feels like it, especially within the last year or two, somewhere around there, he's gotten just like obsessed with Christianity and always talking about that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you saw his last Joe Rogan appearance, but he was talking about, well, the Bible isn't true, but it's the structure for what tells us what truth itself is. And like one thing that he says on the topic of religion in particular that bothers me is that he says that no one is an atheist because everyone has a highest moral good at the top of their morality value hierarchy, and that means that everyone believes in God, which I think is just ridiculous language games that he's playing there. You can obviously you can have a highest moral value without it necessarily having anything to do with God.
yeah. I mean, that's a very strange way of talking. Like, is it the so like if I believe that there are like three or four moral values that are all equally important, but also more important than anything else, like am I then a polytheist, right? Like do I have many gods? You know, like it's so weird, right? I guess yeah, I'm trying to. I wish I remembered off the top of my head. I remember he's had some extremely strange tweets about. Oh yeah. Sorry, no, I just remembered what I was thinking of. So he tweeted this thing about. Here, let me see if I can find it. I'll bet it comes up right away. Uh, so here we go. Uh, so this was an old Jordan Peterson tweet. He says, "Proof itself of any sort is impossible without an axiom, as Gödel proved. Thus, faith in God is a prerequisite for all proof." That is a Jordan Peterson tweet from 2017.
You're
So
the logic expert. That second statement does not seem to logically follow from the first one at all.
not in any way I can tell. No, that just that's because it's like so you need some sort of assumption. So therefore, you need to assume that God exists. I mean that seems like there's a weird leap there, but he does a lot of weird leaps
that
when talking about this
that
subject.
seems kind of like the opposite of Sam Harris in a way. Like, well, of
Yeah,
course everyone has
it's true.
axioms, therefore we all have to be scientific rationalists.
Yeah, no, it is kind of the opposite of Sam Harris. It's so I mean, whatever. I remember, and like part of the thing that makes this so tricky with Peterson is that if you listen carefully to his stated views about like what it means for something to be true, like I don't, I mean, like that's like okay, so wait a second. Like when he says he believes in God or he says whatever, does he actually mean that he thinks it's true in the way that you and I would understand true that there's a God, or does it mean that like he just thinks it's like I don't know, evolutionarily useful or something to believe it, right? Because he makes these weird statements about how like it's like this super crude version of pragmatism, like truth is that which
Yeah.
helps us survive as a species. Which I will say, I mean, I've never felt so sympathetic to Sam Harris as that very first time that he had Peterson on his podcast, and they just spent like an hour arguing about that, and just like listening to Harris try it over and over again to be like, okay, but like, wouldn't it be possible that like you have a chemical weapons lab and like the result of the research destroys all of human life on Earth, but like that doesn't mean that the theory of chemistry wasn't true. In fact, it wouldn't have happened if the theory of chemistry wasn't true. And it's just such an obvious point, and Peterson is just so strange and resistant to it. Like I remember Fred Nick Stang is a Kant scholar, teaches at the University of Toronto now. I think but I remember him saying like he sounded like what the conversation sounded like was some like kind of tired, overextended adjunct professor trying to like explain something to the world's most confused undergraduate.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I was just thinking about Peterson's first podcast with Sam Harris too. I think it's kind of ironic that in spite of him criticizing postmodernism all the time, I would say that he actually is a postmodern definition of truth, because he talks about how, there are different types of truth. There's scientific truths, there are religious truths, and that sort of thing. And that's what see it seems to me that that's what allows for his obsession with Christianity and also his obsession with truth, but basically kind of like an obsession with religious truths in particular, whether they're
uh,
scientific truths or not, I think.